right, Taylor. So, can you tell us about how you first got into racing?
So my grandma was a NASCAR fan from since the year I was born to present day. And she always had the races on TV, and we could never change the channel during the weekend. That was just a rule and a staple in her home. And so one day in 2016, this is like 16 years later, I finally decided, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to watch a race from start to finish, see if I like it. And I was so intrigued. It was a Texas Motor Speedway, at the time, Xfinity Series race.
Hmm.
Um, and I just was infatuated by it. It was different than any other sport I'd ever seen or played growing up. And it was from that point on, I just kind of fell in love with it. Went to the track with my grandma, my siblings, and my grandpa for the first time in 2017. And just being there in person and seeing everything just made me fall head over heels in love with racing.
That's awesome. So, as a journalist, was there like an announcer or anyone in the media that kind of stuck out as, oh, I want to be that person or I want to be like that person?
I think for any female journalist or even content creator that kind of comes into the space, in particular with NASCAR, you always see like Jamie Little, Caitlin Vincey,
Hmm.
Heather DeBow, all of those incredible women, and you're like, I want to be just like them. And you see them on TV, and you're just like, how do I have their job? How can I be in the
Hmm.
position they're at, where they're pit reporting and stuff like that? And from a writing standpoint, for me, I loved watching the work of like Kelly Crandall, of course, Deb Williams, Holly Kane, the three incredible women who have blazed a trail for female journalists in the sport. Those are the few that I really looked up to as I was getting into the industry, as well
Hmm.
as like Jeff Gluck, Toby Christie, and all these other incredible writers. I think what's so great about the sport is there's not a shortage of incredible and hardworking people that
Hmm.
you just feel so inspired by. And so, from that standpoint, from the journalistic perspective on camera and off camera, those are the ones who inspired me.
That's awesome. For a lot of race fans, Above the Yellow Line Media has become their go-to place for news. What do you attribute that popularity to?
I think the one thing that I think my team and myself have done really well is cultivating a community. I started
Hmm.
Above the Yellow Line, my podcast, because I wanted to find community. I wanted to kind of pick my life back up. I was dealing with a chronic illness that was undiagnosed at the time, and I left college. My life pretty much came to a halt. And so I was trying to figure out how can I kind of jump back into something I'm passionate about. And the one main thing that stuck with me was NASCAR and basing Above the Yellow Line around finding community as opposed to just wanting to have my voice heard, I think
Hmm.
has been the crux of what we've been able to accomplish, not only with our individual shows, but now with ATYL Media as a whole. We've
Hmm.
found our community, we found our niche, we found an audience that loves to kind of tune in, and we're continuing to evolve our programming to reflect that and what our audience wants to hear. So I think that's what's made us really successful, and that's what's made us more of a staple, especially for younger viewers to come in and
Hmm.
learn about the sport, not only from the perspective of professionals who are in the garage area talking to the drivers, the teams, etc., but also from the perspective of fans as well.
I know that's what stood out to me was I guess I had no idea just how big the team was. And I thought that was so cool because I know for me personally, whenever I'm working on a project, it's always better when there's more people like there. When there, like you said, there's a community instead of like me just like in a room by myself, like trying to write or trying to film or whatever. So for me, like I thought it was really cool just how much you guys are covering like as a team. So moving on, you've had the opportunity to interview a lot of super cool people in the industry. Is there one that stands out to you as your favorite?
That's a great question. It's so hard to determine a favorite interview for me. There's been a lot of
Hmm.
favorite projects, I would say, so I'm going to cheat the question a little bit. But when I was working with Racing America, I had so
Hmm.
much fun doing a bunch of shop hits, so going to the shop after a driver would win a race and interviewing them at that point. But I loved also doing a preview show that we did for last year's Daytona 500. It was my first really big project. I got to talk to Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, Josh Berry. There were so many drivers I got to chat with just about the 500, what it means to them, what
Hmm.
it means to their family. Michael McDowell was another one of those drivers. And that was a project that really stood out to me too. But there's one interview that I did towards the beginning of my time as a journalist that I will never forget because it was so unique. I've never done an interview like it since, but this was a truck series race at Mid Ohio back in I think 2022.
Hmm.
And I we were trying to, run short on time, or we were trying to find time to get an interview in with Matt Benedetto from the autograph session at the I guess picnic benches that they have at Mid Ohio to when they
Hmm.
were supposed to get ready for pre-race. Very tight schedule. And so his PR rep at the time, Monty, shout out to you, he was like, "Would you be able to do an interview like on the cart as we're going to
Hmm.
going back to the hauler to get ready?" And I said, "Sure." So I interviewed Matt Benedetto on a golf cart, and there was another like race happening as well, some open wheeled race, and it was the most chaotic, just unique experience I think I've had while interviewing somebody.
Hmm.
But Matt couldn't have been more gracious and awesome to work with.
That's awesome. What advice would you give to someone who is wanting to get into motorsports journalism?
I think the key for me and what really helped progress my career is finding that balance between being a fan of the sport and being a professional in the sport. They are two
Hmm.
totally different things, and they're not always going to merge together. I think as professionals, we get into NASCAR in particular because we love the sport. We had a favorite driver as we were growing up and things like that. But there's a time where you have to separate that in order to make it a career. And that can be really challenging from somebody who started off as a content creator who was a fan and had to find a way to balance that out. So that would be some of the advice I would give. The other advice I would give as well is just never be afraid to ask questions. LinkedIn
Hmm.
is also your biggest tool, network, but also just start making content. I get so many DMs, emails just saying, "Hey, what did you do to start?" or "What can I do?" And everyone feels like they need like a $4,000 camera and like a $500 microphone to start. That's not the case.
Hmm.
So my big thing is I started my show with a really old like DSLR camera from like 2012 and my
Hmm.
phone as a microphone, and that was my start. From there, I learned the tools that I actually needed so I could save up and spend money on things that I would use for a longer amount of time. I think people feel like they need to break the bank before they even get
Hmm.
started, and that's just not the case. The real thing is just start.
Awesome. And finally, I've learned that this question is either super easy or the hardest question, like out of them. But what's your favorite NASCAR paint scheme of all time?
Okay. So I have a lot of I have a lot of cars behind me of some of my favorite schemes of all
Hmm.
time, but the one that sticks out to me that is super nostalgic is that Terry Labonte Kellogg's
Hmm.
cornflakes paint scheme. There is nothing like it. It screams nostalgia, like 90s, early 2000s. Like it to me, it's what I think of when I think of quintessential NASCAR. So that has to be my
Hmm.
go-to.
Awesome. Well, Taylor, thank you so much for joining us for this interview.
Thank you so much.